Well, I'm wearing my purple here in favor of Ballston Spa. The Scotties play a rare Thursday night game because of Rosh Hashanah tonight. The entire Section 2 football clan pretty much did that, or at least Class AA did. And they reigned victorious, 28-14. And my friend Mayor Ron Kim in Saratoga Springs is going to have to wear a Scotties jersey at the next Saratoga Springs City Council meeting. How's that for you? Yeah,
nice.
It was his idea. I'll give him credit. There's nothing like pride of your team. A lot of students came out for this game, and why don't you tell folks what we're about to see here about student pride?
Yeah, no, this was a very clever week one for the NESCAC season opener. The Bates Bobcats polled their students there, and I think it's in Lewiston, Maine, to look at the schedule for this fall NESCAC season. And some of the answers that the Batesies, I think they called them, came up with were pretty funny.
Is that NESCAC?
No idea. Literally no idea. Wisconsin?
Let's go Bowdoin Elephants.
I'm pretty sure that's a state university. It went extinct in America.
Is this even a college? Mountain Lion?
Amherst.
Bulls. I feel like cow is too domestic. Roosters. Starts with a T. The University of Maine?
I know that one stands for Hamilton. The mascot?
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton.
Those are the Bates Bobcats. There we go.
Bates Bobcats!
The Bobcats. Bates.
Bates, let's go. I hope we win.
Bates Bobcats, of course.
Oh, Bates. Bobcat.
I would be a terrible person not knowing that. Bates College, Bobcat.
Oh, that's us. What are we doing? Bobcats.
It starts with T. Maine?
Maine. Wow. I hope the Bates College football staff realizes that they're playing Wisconsin tonight. That could be a tough one. And on a more serious note, we hope that everybody on the northeastern seaboard, whatever is going on with this Hurricane Lee or whatever, is no big deal. I know we have friends in Newport and all across, Dartmouth, across the coast of Massachusetts and New England. Hopefully, it's something to do about nothing. But there were actually a couple of games, including Bates versus Wisconsin, a.k.a. Wesleyan from Connecticut, Middletown, that got moved to tonight. Originally, there was only going to be just the Westfield State WestCon game as the only Friday night game, along with your alma mater Union hosting Springfield. But we got a couple more games now, thanks to some New England schools that are like, you know what, we're not going to risk it. We'll just move our game up a night. WPI, RPI, instead of being Saturday at 5 p.m. is now tomorrow night. I think you were going to maybe try to shoot over to that game, but you can't be two places at once now. So we'll get into where Frank's headed in a little bit, but nice job by the Bates Bobcats sports information department. That was really clever, and good luck against Wisconsin.
We'll talk about a lot of games coming up here. This is week 3 coming up, our preview show of season 16 of In the Huddle. Thank God. So you'll see a note here saying more conference play begins. Not necessarily the case in all regions. Region 1 definitely getting a little bit of start with the MASCAC, it looks like, with UMass Dartmouth and Framingham. But still a lot of non-conference games going on for one more week here before some of these conferences do start in earnest in that respect. JB, take us through Region 1.
Yeah, well, like I said before, we have a couple of Friday night games, including the RPI WPI Transit Trophy game. If you're not familiar with the Transit Trophy, I think you can check it out on both RPI and WPI's websites. It's kind of like a small microscope looking thing. I don't know. It's pretty cool. Heavy trophy though. I think Frank's even hoisted it up. He's attended a few of those games over the years. Yeah, Saturday, though, we have a nice slate starting off with Rochester going to Salve Regina. Hopefully that won't be in a torrential downpour. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Dartmouth and Framingham kicks off the MASCAC season. That's always a great rivalry game. Framingham looked a little shaky on Thursday night, but they've had a couple extra days to prepare for this. The Corsairs struggled a little bit with Curry, which was kind of surprising last weekend. So that's a big game for who's going to win the MASCAC, so keep an eye on that. Endicott travels to play SUNY Maritime, who now in the NUMAC, so that's another cross-conference thing. Stevenson versus FDU Florham is a MAC game. We've got Nichols Coast Guard, Norwich Castleton, sort of the battle of the northern New England there. Utica's taking on Lyco. Our friend Big Tony has got Moose Hogan previewing that one. If you haven't seen it on Twitter, that's pretty good stuff week in and week out. Definitely one of our favorite D3 football parents who's out there. St. Lawrence is traveling to Western New England, and then we got Tufts versus Trinity. And I did mention probably should be on the Frank, type it in on the Friday. We should throw Bates versus Wisconsin, or Wesleyan at Bates. Actually, that's a 7 p.m. kickoff as well. We'll give some shout outs to the NESCAC throughout the year, but that game sort of switched late yesterday. I didn't have a chance to update the slide, so good luck to both teams there, and that's Region 1.
Yeah, Wisconsin. Let's go to Region 2. Springfield versus Union is the game I will be attending tonight. I got permission. They said I would be allowed, despite the Garnet Charger kerfuffle that we've been having with them. So I will keep my mouth shut. I'll probably be in the Springfield sideline for most of this game. We'll see if I'm allowed after my pick later on today in this show. We are going to be picking that game, even though it's not one of our quote-unquote games of the week that we pick here, because we have you picking Grove City, Case Western Reserve, me picking Susquehanna versus Cortland. More on that game in a moment, which is against between two front runners in the Landmark and the Empire 8. But JB, take us through the rest of Region 2 before we get to our first guest.
Yeah, we have a couple of noon kickoffs that stood out to me with Brockport taking on Wilkes. These are both teams that are looking for a win after a tough loss in week 2. Muhlenberg is trying to keep it to 3-0 against TCNJ. They're going up to Jersey for that one. We already covered Susquehanna and Cortland, and I have a feeling we'll be talking about that game among other things going on with the Dragons shortly. Catholic versus Morrisville State's an interesting NUMAC versus Landmark versus Empire 8 team. And then you got Westminster versus W&J, a big game in the pack. F&M is taking on Montclair State in New Jersey. Hopkins Salisbury, which stands out at 2 o'clock. That'll be a good one. Gettysburg is going to go to Christopher Newport. Your Sinus versus Rowan is an interesting, sort of almost primetime game. Rowan looked very strong last week. We've seen your Sinus knock off Muhlenberg these last couple of years. The Bears are kind of knocking on the door there, trying to take that next level. Can they get a win in New Jersey?
8-game winning streak for your Sinus, believe it or not. I did not realize that until I was prepping for Quick Hits today. Whoa. They have 2 games this year, 6 games last year, and that 9-2 season they had. And so that's one of the largest or longest winning streaks in Division III. It's, I think, number 3 right now in winning streaks nationally.
Wow, that's an impressive run by the Bears. We'll see if the Profs can take some air out of those tires or if it keeps rolling. And then my pick of the game for Region 2 is Grove City versus Case Western, both undefeated in MAC play. This game was a 14-13 final. Last year it was a crazy game. All the scoring was in the first half, and that was like a defensive battle in the second. And Grove City hung on by the narrowest of margins, 1 point. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen this season in Cleveland at Case.
JB, Region 2 will stop there because we have a guest that we're prepping up right now to come on to the show, and I will let you begin to do the honors here.
Yeah, well, this has been a long time coming because we've been calling his name over the airways for the last 4 or 5 seasons. He did miss a year with an injury, and then COVID hit. So long time coming, but senior wide receiver Cole Burgess has been one of the key reasons why the Cortland Dragons offense just keeps rolling right along. They put up a lot of points in week 1 on the Del Val defense. They won it big again in week 2, and they have a big game where they're going to need him and the other offensive weapons to kind of go toe to toe with Susquehanna. So welcome, Cole. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Hey, Cole, I previewed this, I think, earlier in the week by saying that you are not the biggest player out there by any stretch of the imagination, but you play like you are. You've been definitely having a good, let's say, connection with Mr. Boyce in the backfield there. I mean, it looks like you're having fun. I've been to some of your games, as you know, and you're having fun out there. Tell me what this season is feeling like already as you guys are out of the box doing, what Cortland does, winning games here. How's it going for you?
It's going great, and yeah, you're right. We're having a lot of fun. Just going out there every Saturday, even every day in practice, and just having fun with the guys playing. We're playing football, so I mean, life doesn't get much better than that. But yeah, we started off good against a good Del Val team, and that win meant a lot because of how we finished last year, and we knew we left a lot of meat on the bone last year, so. Starting off this season with a bang against a good top 25 team, it means a lot. We got another top 25 matchup this week, so hope to do the same thing again.
Well, so far you guys have scored over 100 points in only 2 weeks. Last week, though, we saw that there were no touchdowns scored in Brockport in what was kind of a crazy game there. What did you guys sort of take away from the game tape? I mean, obviously, very different styles of offense and defense that you play compared to the Golden Eagles. But what sort of things did you see with Susquehanna?
Yeah, we saw that the weather conditions weren't great. Obviously, it was a wet day. I know that. But one takeaway that we're taking away from that game is that this team knows how to win when it's hard. I didn't watch the game, but I got the offensive film or their defensive film. So I just saw that they were down with 2 minutes left. And Brockport had the ball, and they ended up getting the ball back and punting it back over. I forgot how it went, but they won in the hard and ended up winning late in the game against a good Brockport team. Brockport's always good, so it's going to be a 4-quarter battle, and we just got to go and play our brand of football. And yeah, that's what we got to do.
Cole, I want to go back to something you kind of alluded to about leaving a lot of meat on the bone from last year. The Randolph-Macon situation last year surprised a lot of people that you guys didn't perform better in that game. And, games like those, and you can ask Trinity this, is a type of situation where you'll end up getting a lot of fifth-year seniors back that have eligibility left because they feel like there's unfinished business. What did happen between that game and now? In terms of the lessons you guys got from that game, the commitment from guys that wanted to maybe come back and finish some business in the season, kind of take us through what happened from that game forward.
Yeah, we got a lot of experience on this team between seniors, juniors, and I mean I'm a 6th-year senior. We got 5th-year seniors. We got 4th-year juniors. So our team is very experienced, but that loss didn't sit well with us. I mean, if you were to tell us after week 9 when we were 9-0 that we would have lost the next 2 games, I mean, you guys probably wouldn't have believed it. We didn't believe it, but it ended up happening. So, yeah, I think we bought the hype a little too much, and we got to come out here this season. We can't take any week for granted. We got to play our brand of football. And if we do that, then I think the sky's the limit for this team. We got guys on offense. We got guys on defense. We got special team guys. This is the best team I've played on since I've been here, and I'm excited to see how far we can take it.
Well, a special shout out to SID extraordinaire Fran Elia, because without him, I wouldn't know that not only is this the first time you've ever played against Susquehanna, but they're not completely unfamiliar because you guys have scrimmaged them over the last few years. Does that past experience in these preseason games, scrimmages, help you guys, or is it just one of these, hey, it's just another opponent, we're just going to do what we do?
Yeah, I mean, scrimmages, we don't even have the whole playbook in, so these games, when we don't play them, it's really just we got to do what we got to do. It's another opponent. It's about us. It's always about us. We got to play the way we play, and yeah, I'm excited.
Empire 8 play doesn't start too far away from now, and you guys have a bullseye on your back. There's no doubt that you become kind of the league standard of sorts and the guys that everybody wants to beat. Obviously, you got a big game this weekend. I'm not asking you to look ahead per se, but I mean, do you feel like you guys are the favorites to a certain degree? Do you feel like there's going to be this target on your back when you get into every Empire 8 game?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to play the Dragons until it's time to play the Dragons. That happened last year in the Empire 8, and we're hoping to do the same thing again. I expect us to come out on top again.
Tell us a little bit about the Dragon game day experience. I mean, I think you guys are, obviously I've been in upstate New York. I've been by your stadium. It's one of the nicer ones that I've seen anyway. I know Frank's been to a lot more than I have. But for the fans, either from Susquehanna or anywhere that are coming to a game in Cortland, what is that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed. We're blessed to play in the stadium we got. We got a really good complex. Fans are going to come in to honestly, we got a stadium better than some D1 stadiums. So there's that. We just got new turf. We got a jumbotron now. So when I score a touchdown, you're gonna see my pretty face on the jumbotron. They're gonna see a lot of big plays, and yeah, we get a good crowd too. Week 1 we had I forget Hall of Fame weekend where we inducted all of our past Hall of Fame members in. That was a great crowd. I think we had 4,000 there. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
All right, I've got a question for both of you guys now, because when I was reading up on your background, Cole, I saw that you were from a town which, from the state that I grew up in, is referred to as Greenwich, but apparently in New York it's called something else. Frank, Cole, tell me what's going on with Greenwich here.
Greenwich, yeah, it's a nice little small town. I graduated with about 60 kids. We got more cows than people in that town, but I love it. It's a great town. It made me who I am. So, I mean, we actually just got new turf, too. We got new turf, so it's almost done. But, yeah.
Is it green turf in Greenwich, hopefully?
It's green turf, yeah. Black end zones, green lettering. Yeah, it looks good. I wish I got to play on it.
No red turf at Cortland yet, though, huh?
No.
Maybe not.
Black turf in
10 years.
Yeah, the Morrisville experience I get tomorrow, I believe, when they're hosting Catholic, to see the black turf and how that exactly feels for everybody involved with their sun beating down on it. But nonetheless, Cole, James alluded to something I wanted to ask you, though. You're a quote-unquote sixth-year senior because of the injuries and everything else. What's next for you? I mean, you've stayed dedicated to football for these years. Is there something football-based coming up for you next? I mean, you're a New York boy here through and through. You've stayed somewhat local down in Cortland, a couple hours away. What is next for you after this season?
Well, I'm taking it day by day right now. I know I got to just ball out right now, but yeah, I've always said I want to play football at the next level since I've been a kid. So that's the goal. We've been having scouts come and see me and a few other players at practice throughout the week, throughout the training camp. So the next level is definitely potential, but right now I just got to focus on playing the best brand of football I can play and taking this team as far as we can go.
You're a great player. There's no doubt about it. I've seen it firsthand, and so I'm sure those scouts are seeing the same things I'm seeing, which is speed and skill out there, to say the least, and you obviously take good care of yourself. So let the sky be the limit and see where you can go with it. I wish you luck, as does JB, on that journey, and keep us posted on it as it develops. Love to see where things go for you ultimately, be it in a traditional pro setting or something else along the way. So let us know. Cole, you know what comes up next here on the show, I think, which is we give you a chance for any shout-outs to family, friends, teammates, etc. that might be watching the show. Cole Burgess, the stage is yours for shout-outs.
All right, I'll start off. Shout out my mom and dad. I know they're probably watching right now. Hey, Mom. Shout out my roommates. They're sleeping right now. Rashad Tucker, the shiftiest player in the country, and Jaden Alfano St. John, the best running back in the country. And, yeah, shout out my team, and let's go ball out this weekend.
Tell me something. How long did it take you to realize that his last name was actually Alfano St. John, the way it's spelled out? Because I tripped on that for about 8 different weeks that I've covered you guys and finally got it right. I mean, he's a great player, no doubt, but the name, oh my goodness, I can't ever get it right until somebody finally said it should have had spaces probably in between it, Frank.
You would think, right?
Yeah,
you would think it would have
seriously.
Spaces, but Jaden Alfano St. John, I mean, what a name, right? It's my running back.
That is a name. Oh, yeah.
No, he is great. Tell us a good Jay and Alfano St. John story, though. I have a funny feeling that you got one or two. I know he can be a little bit of a character from things I've heard out there. Only something that can be said on the air that won't get us in trouble, or you in trouble for that matter. Go for it.
I don't even know where to start. I guess, so I'll do a quick story. There's a lot, but I'll do the quick, harmless story. We moved into our apartment during camp, and we have a balcony, right? And the people that lived before us, they just kept the table and the chairs on the balcony. And this guy decides to I forgot what we were even doing out there, but he just starts throwing the chairs off the table. And then he throws the table he throws the chairs off the balcony, and then he throws the table off the balcony. And I'm just sitting there like, yo, why did you do that? Like, we just had a perfectly good patio set.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe he was just redecorating.
Yeah, maybe you realized you guys weren't playing Wisconsin like Bates is this weekend or something. Maybe that was what was going on there. Yeah, you got a little angry about it. Well, Jaden's going to play with intensity against Susquehanna. You're going to play with intensity against Susquehanna. Don't throw the patio furniture off the balcony, though, after the game, okay? And best of luck to you guys. We're not picking, in terms of favorites here. We love both teams, but we do want to see a great game between two great teams. Good luck to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Cole Burgess, wide receiver at SUNY Cortland. I love his whole, watch my pretty face on the Jumbotron idea there. He's a character, right? Yeah, well, hey, if you got the looks, you might as well use them the way you got them, right, in that respect? Yeah. Well, sir, I'm going to give you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to give a quick shout out to myteamstream.net. If there are any people up in upstate New York that like to follow multiple Empire 8, Liberty League, maybe Alfred State, some of those games, they actually do sort of like our whip around show, but every weekend focused on upstate New York games. They'll be probably covering this one. I don't know, maybe I'll give them a call on Saturday to check in. I like promoting other folks out there doing D3 stuff, so I wanted to give them a shout out. So if you're an upstate New York fan and you want to sort of look at a lot of different games simultaneously, this might be a good avenue to check out. I guarantee you they'll be giving some scores from this Cortland-Susquehanna game. It's one of the biggest games in the nation this weekend.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting weekend. We'll take a step back here for a second before we go through regions 3 through 6 here. But it's an interesting weekend insofar as there's 5 or 6 games that are kind of the must-see games, and then everything else is kind of like regions 3 and regions 4, or regions 3 and 4, I should say, kind of are like, hey, I don't know what to really watch there except for these couple key games. Region 6 has a lot of out-of-division matchups, as we see in this banner that I'm about to put back up here right now. So it's an interesting week, a lot of buys where you wouldn't necessarily expect them. This is kind of the, I think, take a deep breath kind of week for a lot of people. But some games have implications beyond implications, ultimately, because if, let's say, Mary Hardin Baylor beats Whitewater, which is on this slide here, then they throw a little chaos into that whole Pool C discussion one more time, because can Whitewater make it through a WEAC season unblemished? I don't know. It's a tough question, ultimately. So we'll see what happens, and you cannot overlook, as you are not overlooking, Trinity versus Birmingham Southern there. BSC had a tough go of it last week against Huntingdon, who had a tough go of it the first week against Barry, giving up 67 points in that game. I don't know what to believe about Birmingham Southern except for this one fact. They may have been looking ahead to that Trinity game last week because they know the implications. This is a school that we don't know how long they're going to be around at this point. Let's just be honest. They have a new lease on life.
True.
I don't know if that's a permanent lease on life or not. Their head coach saw fit to leave for Austin last year or after the end of last year. Yep. I think he was starting to read tea leaves there. I don't know for sure. We didn't get a chance to talk directly, but I'm sure there's a story somewhere there. So Birmingham Southern here is kind of fighting for pride. They lost their number one running back who transferred also. So this is not fully tooled Birmingham Southern necessarily either. But they've taken Trinity to the mat twice in the last couple of years and just come up short. It sounds like Trinity's story against UMHB, doesn't it? And they got that monkey off their back. Now it's at Birmingham Southern's turn. This is a big game. I applaud you for picking it as the game of the week there and looking past Whitewater versus UMHB. I did not do so on D3Football.com, but I kind of was thinking about doing it.
Well, I don't know if you had a chance to see the, let's see, right over my shoulder, other way, James. The D1 Reject show with Tucker Horn. Got their T-shirt up in the back there. He had an interview with Kobe this week, and basically Tucker was saying for the Tigers, this is their first playoff game. And so I know Trinity's locked in. They know they barely beat the Panthers last year on that kind of last second touchdown pass in San Antonio, so they're taking this game very seriously. Whitewater versus UMHB, you said it in our last show. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at how close and competitive this game is. I know this Crusaders team has struggled. They're not maybe as strong as we're used to seeing them, but it's their third week of the season. It seems like they've settled in on a quarterback who didn't have a bad game against Trinity last week, so you never know what's going to happen. And then elsewhere in Region 3, there's a lot of, looks like, USA South and ODAC crossover. You got Maryville, Shenandoah, Hamden City, Greensboro, Methodist, Washington Lee. Oshkosh versus ETBU is an interesting game for me, Frank, because the Titans are got to be a little stung after dropping that game to Wheaton last week on the road. They go on the road again, flying all the way down to Texas to play a Tigers team that came back from 31-7 to win that game on a missed field goal. That was kind of a crazy thing. So anything can happen down in Texas. Should be exciting. Center, Rhodes, Guilford, Huntington. You kind of wrap up the ODAC USA South slate. So some interesting little interconference stuff going on here in Region 3. But the two big games, Trinity at Birmingham and then Whitewater at Mary Hardin Baylor.
Sorry to prematurely move along on you there, but we want to look briefly at Region 4. It's the hook. It's the old hook. No, we look at Region 4, and the real story, I think, of Region 4 is the OAC play against teams that are going to be the heir apparents to try to beat Mount Union and win the OAC or get a Pool C bid ultimately. You pick JCU and Baldwin-Wallace. That's a great pick. I've got Heidelberg versus ONU because I think these two teams are kind of very even out there. And we'll see how it plays out ultimately. But then that'll set up eventually, a matchup between the winners of these two games, I think, down the line. So you've kind of got the four teams that I place into the, I wonder who's going to be kind of a Pool C eligible team into this batch here. And so we'll see how these two games play out, and then we'll see the winner versus winner at a certain point later on, most likely here. What are your thoughts on that and other Region 4 games?
Yeah, well, what I'm curious to see is how good is John Carroll kind of coming off of that bye week. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with Whitewater, who we saw, doubled up St. John's last week. Is John Carroll that sort of super national caliber of team? I mean, theoretically, they should blow out Baldwin-Wallace, but we know that whenever they play for this trophy, which I think is like a rock or something, I think it's like I'm not sure exactly what it's referred to as, but you see the picture of it there, and they've had some epic battles over the years. So I think Baldwin-Wallace is going to level up, and John Carroll will have his hands full. But this is a chance for the Blue Streaks to continue to tell that story that hey, we barely lost to a top 5 team, and should the season end up for them 8-2 or something like that they could be in that Pool C conversation. There's going to be very limited opportunities for teams to get those 4 at-large bids this fall. John Carroll has an interesting story if they can, keep kind of rolling along here.
You'll notice Wabash versus Butler, and this is a good point probably again to stop because we'll have a guest coming up right now, and we'll talk about Regions 5 and 6 after this interview, and then go to predictions for those wondering. number of years ago, specifically 5 years ago, we had a moment where we had a cold open on our show that we didn't want to do. And we were trying to look back at 15 years of In the Huddle, which is going to have our anniversary very soon in the next couple of weeks. But we want to look back at stories and storylines that have kind of paved the way for this show to continue on the way it has over the years. And this was a storyline that, again, we didn't want to really talk about, but unfortunately we had to. And we want to update you on it at this point in some way, shapes, or forms or another. And here was the first minute 15 or so of that show. JB, instead of our normal intro, as we prepared to record this on Monday night, September 10th, we learned of some upsetting news, to say the least. Our friends out in Wabash, while we are an East Region show, we wanted to talk about something that happened out there. And that was the sudden death of a teammate of the Wabash football family, Evan Hansen, a senior captain, I believe linebacker for them, number 32. He passed away, I believe, either earlier today or late on Sunday. This is a shocking bit of news, obviously, to that football family because of the suddenness of his death. And, words can't describe the condolences and the sorrow that we have here that we want to send toward our family out in Wabash. There's 25,000 players in Division III, give or take, and the loss of any one of them is a very, very saddening thing because it's youth we're talking about here that we're losing, and this was a youth that is gone way too early. Yep, and it was, as everybody knows at this point, a suicide scenario by Evan. And the question that was unanswered at the time really was it caused by concussions or CTE ultimately, or at least was that a contributing cause of his passing or his reasons for passing ultimately? We wanted to update folks. It's been 5 years. September 10th, 2023 marked 5 years for his passing. And we've brought on today to talk with us his father, Chuck Hansen, a very brave man for how he and his wife Mary have handled this along the way over the years. And Chuck, I remember being in contact with you 5 years ago. And you were a stand-up guy from minute one about something that was, I don't know how I would even begin to continue in a situation like that if it happened to me. I don't have kids, but I get chills just thinking about the situation. How are you? How is Mary doing? How's your family, 5 years later, especially after you had to celebrate his memory earlier this week or last week, with respect to his passing?
Yeah, we're doing well. Thanks for asking. I assume you can hear me. Okay. Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, it's been 5 years. Quite a bit's happened in that time, but one thing we've really been doing is trying to make sense of what happened to Evan and to help carry on his legacy. And we've, for example, created a legacy foundation where we raise money for different charitable things. We have a golf tournament every year. We've had 5 now. In that time, we've raised over $250,000 to provide to different charities. So, and we're also, trying to, both focus on his legacy. What happened to him? Why did he die? Of course, is an issue that's important, but also why did people care so much and about his life and remembering the good things about Evan and how that can help continue to change our lives and the world at large. So we're focusing on all those aspects.
Well, and Chuck, I remember from.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just mentioned Wabash and Butler, so yeah, we'll be actually going to that game this weekend. So that's here in town. So we're we just did a suicide walk back at Wabash College last weekend, and there was over 300. A lot of them were students there, which for a campus of 800 to 900 young men is quite a substantial. A number of them participated, so we're still involved in closely with Wabash and with the high school where Evan went, and obviously played football there as well.
Yeah, I guess to pivot a little bit from what I was originally going to ask, I was thinking, I imagine that over the years, and I kind of know the answer to this, but I think it would be nice for the audience to get an understanding from your perspective. It would be very easy for you and your family to kind of be anti-football after what happened. But in fact, you guys are kind of the opposite. You've continued to embrace the sport, with obviously, some safety measures and other things. But tell us a little bit about that journey. And, when people may, either ask or wondering like, well, why do you guys still go to these, football games? Isn't that part of the problem? What would your response be to that?
Well, I mean, we're still part of the community, right? And so if we think there are some changes that need to be made and some lessons to be learned, and we're choosing to do that within the community instead of outside the community. And, because Evan played 14 years of football, and football was a big part of who he was, and he really enjoyed it. And we're kind of thinking of, and this is not just football. This is really all sports or other activities that can cause damage to the head. So we're not just picking out football, but so that's how, I mean, we're choosing to do it, I guess within the community to raise awareness, to not sweep it under the rug. As far as, obviously he died at his own hand, after the second game of the season. So we've never been hiding that fact, but we also don't want to pretend that there wasn't a reason why this happened. And we think that, there's so many positive benefits, and I appreciate what you guys are doing in the Division III level of sports. There's so many positive things about community and life lessons that are learned playing football. So how do we keep that while minimizing and reducing greatly the risk that impacts to the head can have for players both now and later in their lives.
Chuck, you and I had a pretty in-depth conversation on Monday on my drive back from New York City to upstate New York, and I was most interested at first to learn about what was learned subsequent to his death, because I know you had sent his brain out for tests, essentially for examination, to see if there was anything we could learn that could help other people later on with respect to CTE issues. And you did get some feedback eventually. It took some time from what I understand. Take us through that situation. And, the other thing you said to me, and I'll let you elaborate on it, is the time gap between his death and the actual feedback you got may have been a blessing in disguise in terms of helping you become a better advocate for everything that you were advocating at this point, and at a much, let's say, more level head about everything, because obviously early on there's upset, there's emotion, and everything else that goes with it. Mm-hmm. Take us through kind of the time frame, what you learned, and how you have responded from that point forward.
Yeah, so Evan's brain was sent to Boston University. They're kind of the leader in this CTE research, basically because of they have so many brains coming in that it just takes a while to process them, and it basically is slicing and staining with different dyes and looking under a microscope. Nothing too fancy, but it was over a year before they were able to determine that Evan did have CTE. Stage 1 is the first level, there's up to 4 levels, but Evan had stage 1 CTE. It did take over a year. It was November of 2019 before we actually got the news from Dr. Ann McKee, who's another pillar kind of in this area of research. And it probably did, as you said, was a blessing in disguise, only because we really didn't 100% sure know, although we had pretty good suspicions that something was happening. But it did allow us to kind of step back. And I guess the first thing to realize is that no one wanted this to happen. There's nobody that wanted this to happen, right? And, including his coaches, his teammates, his friends, teachers, family, right? No one wanted this to happen. So to try to just start lashing out and blaming people when they were just as upset about this incident as we were, really didn't make sense, after kind of stepping back and looking at, what had happened. So then I guess our pivot was to, okay, what do we need to learn? And we're still learning. That we're kind of just like on the scale of 0 knowing nothing and 100 everything's solved. We're at about 20. Maybe then we were at 10%. Now we're at 20%, 25%. A lot has happened in these 5 years, but there's a lot we don't know. For example, the first thing is the only way to definitively test is after death, and to actually take the brain out, do some slices, put it under the microscope. That's the only definitive way to do it. So that's a big obstacle in this whole this whole issue is just identifying the disease in people, and they're getting closer to be able to do it in the living, but that's a big hurdle, right? If you break your leg, it's pretty obvious right away. My leg's broken and I know what caused it, right? Whereas with CTE, it's like maybe not, and you don't know until after death. And that's been one of the initial hurdles that needs to be overcome.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of that, it seems, at least from my sort of more of a bystander view, is there have been some advance in technology, some prevention. I know our friends at Rochester about 8 to 10 years ago started measuring impact with sensors in the helmet. Now, if you ever see pictures of a team in preseason practice from the Division III level, even through the pros, they're wearing those extra pads on the top of the helmet, which seems to have really made an impact as far as the number of concussion injuries that are reported and what have you. Are there other things that you're aware of, Chuck, or that you're advocating as far as things that can help prevent this from happening in the future?
Yeah, one thing they've learned is that CTE is driven not so much by concussions, the big hits, but just the repetitive head impacts. And just the day in, day out, year after year kind of impacts are really what drives CTE. So, for example, every year you play football, we're kind of picking on football because that's what they have the most data about. But every year you play football, the chance of CTE goes up 30%. Now it starts out extremely remote, and after 3, 4, 5 years, it's still very remote. But when you start getting into 15, 20 years of playing football, if you get into college and the NFL and so on, and you started when you were, basically third grade or second grade or whenever, that all adds up. So I guess, we're working a lot and following a lot what happens with Chris Nowinski. He's the leader of Concussion Legacy Foundation, and they publish guidelines, but it really gets down to reducing the number of hits you take over your lifetime and reducing the severity of the hits. So anything that can reduce the number and size of the impacts, that all incrementally helps. So whether that's rule changes, we obviously seen, how the kickoff is already a lot different than it used to be, right? So that's rule changes. They're trying to get some of those big hits, and a lot of unnecessary hits sometimes out of the game. Practice is another big one, right? We know in the Ivy League they limit the number of hits. In the NFL, if you ever go watch NFL practice, there's very little hitting. I've gone to multiple NFL practices. Yeah. I've never seen a single big hit, right? So and once the season starts, they hardly do any hitting, right? So that's another area that the NFL is kind of taking a lead on. And then the NFL is also promoting, NFL flag football for, so the youngest ones, 3rd grade, 4th grade, elementary school, the Concussion Legacy Foundation is really recommending let's spend more time at that level with flag football for the young ones, and try to take out those years of hits to the head, so that we can, in some sense, we want to allow it at high school, college, and upper levels to, still, be able to play the game. You can't, if you're playing in college or the NFL, you can't undo 2nd grade football hits. The research is showing, it's just kind of cumulative over your lifetime as much as anything. So that's kind of what, as far as football, some of the changes we're thinking of, it's the rules of the game, try to adjust them as reasonably possible. Practice, that's where a bunch of concussions and hits happen. You can't totally remove those, but what can you do to help reduce that? And then flag football, promoting that at the youngest ages is another big thing we're becoming advocates of.
Yep, and flag football is something with the NFL flag I'm actually a referee with regionally and nationally, and I can tell you that the NFL is serious about putting money into that, because I think they're reading the tea leaves as well, saying, this is the future of youth football at the very least. And it's been around for a while, but the redoubling they've been doing has been noticeable in the money that they've put into it. Chuck, last question for you, and in terms of at least the nuts and bolts of things here. I know that you can't really do much to turn back the effects of CTE per se, but you can do things to get people the help they need when they might be in what Evan's shoes were basically 5 years ago plus, where he feels things slipping away or helplessness, etc. And I know there is help out there, and I want you to, if you can, let people know that might be watching, that might be in the same shoes as Evan was, what they can do to save their lives, save their loved ones from what you had to go through ultimately 5 years ago. The floor is yours to kind of give folks the information they need here.
Yeah, that's great point, Frank. There is the Concussion Legacy has a helpline. So if you go to concussionfoundation.org, they have an helpline, an 800 number to call, or a way to email. They basically have a network across the country that with doctors and other people that are familiar with this type of injury, to try to pair up people that think they may have some type of brain injury with whether it's concussions or possible CTE or something else. They have a network of doctors that they can help arrange local help, because not every doctor is up to date with kind of the latest treatment, and that's an important thing, is that just because you think you have CTE doesn't mean you have CTE. Not everyone gets it. Probably most people don't get it, right? So we're not trying to say, well, you played football, you're going to get CTE. It's not like that. But the situation Evan was in is that he thought he had CTE. It turned out that he did, and at the time he didn't have any resources to try to help him, and so he basically I think lost hope, or thought he was just going to be a burden on others. And that's really the reason that what happened. We now know there's a lot of people that have suspected CTE that are living lives. They're managing it, and this is not a death sentence. Even if you think you have it, even if you actually do have it, doesn't mean it's a death sentence. There's a lot of people that are living with symptoms like this, and there's ways to manage it, and that's another important thing to give people hope. Obviously we have to understand it. Let's try to do what we can do to prevent it best we can, but also then to get people that have had a lot of repetitive head impacts and are concerned. Well, there are resources and there is hope, and please reach out and don't think that that there's nothing that can be done. And that's probably something that we really want to take away from Evan's situation, is that he basically thought there was there was no hope, right? And that there's nothing worse in life to think that there is no hope, right? And that's what the underlying cause is. That's obviously this is Suicide Prevention Week. Can be multiple causes why people think that. We have this 988 number. If it's to the point of actually thinking about suicide, please call 988. Reach out to a friend. What you're feeling is temporary. And one of my favorite things about suicide prevention is to remind people, don't fix temporary problems, don't fix manageable problems with a permanent solution, right? So yes, there are some temporary issues you're going through. There is help. It's temporary. You can get help. Don't try to fix that with a permanent solution by ending your own life. That's not the solution.
You and Mary are heroes to me in the way that you've handled this from day one on this. I think I've suggested that in the open, but if not, I'm going to say it flat out right now. And the fact that you are trying to turn this into something where you're saving others in the process of it is special. There's nothing we can do to bring back Evan, which kills us all to have to think that way. And it's unfortunate that we have to have that mindset, but the fact that you're working to make sure that other parents out there don't have to go through what you did, and that other players understand that life continues even if they are stricken with CTE, is so important. That's why we've had Tony Strickland on in the past to talk to us about concussion protocols and safety, etc. To have you on at this point to kind of take us a step further is important. But, Chuck, I'll give you the floor for any last comments you want to give on behalf of you and Mary at this point. But thank you for everything you're doing, despite the darkness that you had to walk through in this whole process. It's a special thing what you guys are doing. There's no doubt about that. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's kind of we just think what we're doing with what needs to be done, and I appreciate the words. I think I don't know. I think a lot of people would just do what we're doing. It just seems like we're trying to make the best of the situation that happened, and appreciate you offering to have me on and to talk about a very difficult topic. It's difficult for us, but it's obviously difficult for anyone that loves football, or other sports, whether it's soccer or rugby or other sports that also have similar issues at times. It's not pleasant to talk about, but pretending it's not an issue is not the answer either, right? So
no.
Well, Chuck, thanks for joining us again, and send our best to Mary as well, and to your entire family out there. And enjoy the game this weekend to the degree possible.
Yep.
Wabash versus Butler will be a good one, to say the least. Thank you, sir.
Be interesting. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Again, just in memory of Evan, a little bit of a moment of silence here from us to remember Evan Hansen, who left us way too soon back in 2018. Never easy.
Well, we don't walk away from the hard stuff, I guess. That's part of, we've been talking about concussions and injuries, and the one, I guess, the one downside of having done this now for 15 years is that just because of life, I mean, we've seen lots of friends, move on to Tevin, whatever you want to. It's just it's unfortunate, but that's part of life. And as a parent, my heart goes out to Chuck and Mary. I can't even imagine, but they clearly are on a mission to help, and that I think is really awesome. And while I hope I'm never in their situation, I'd like to think that if I ever was, that I would try to pick myself up off the floor and do the same thing. So credit to them, and I'm sure their community really appreciates them. And having a wife that's working in the mental health space, just the first step is kind of asking for help and knowing that there are people out there that care about you, that want you to be okay, and that, like, I love that. I'll never forget this. Don't solve a temporary problem with a permanent solution. I love that saying. I'm gonna keep that one going. So hopefully everyone else on who's ever watching, either currently or after the fact, will think of that too.
In 15 years, mental health has played a issue or role through our show. Not every story ends sad necessarily. I think Tevin Jones, who went through some issues with UMHB a number of years ago, and we had him on D3 Football and here as kind of a shared interview scenario. And he made it through after some real problems, some problems with the law in the process. He's happily leading his life right now. Loves seeing his positive posts on Facebook, etc. So we do have happy endings here, per se. This isn't a happy ending, but it's an ending with a resolution that you have to be really, really impressed with in terms of how the family's dealing with it. And again, thank Chuck and Mary, especially Chuck for coming on, but Chuck and Mary for all their feedback and messages of support from day one of this whole situation. And I guess in Chuck's mentality of football not being the problem per se, let's continue with our previews here to the degree we're going to be able to continue here ourselves. I'm going to give you Region 5 to start on here, which again is a region that doesn't have many games to key in on, but there are a couple that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the game that stood out mostly to me was this Co versus Central game. Both of them started off 2-0. It's a big game in the ARC, which is one of the conferences that's going to get a Pool A bid to the tournament. So definitely worth keeping tabs on that one. Augustana is an interesting team, Frank. They're playing in the late game. I was reading up on them recently. They have, I think, 10 fifth-year seniors on the team. They brought back 10 starters on both the offense and defense from last year's 5-5 campaign. Maybe they're a team in the CCIW that could shake things up. I was texting a little bit with the Culver's Isthmus Bowl last night. They were asking me who I thought might be a potential participant in their game, and I was like, hey, maybe keep an eye on these Vikings. Like they're bringing back a lot. We'll see. I mean, I know Wash U's been kind of the rep the last couple of years, and they've been a strong team. But yeah, you never know. We'll have to wait and see.
I've got Wheaton, Illinois Wesleyan keyed in here because I want to see if Wheaton continues their momentum here. IWU can provide problems sometimes out there, and so I do want to see how this one turns out. That was a big win for Wheaton last week. Let's not underestimate what that win meant against Oshkosh. But ultimately, I just want to see where they go now on the next step as they get closer and closer to the Little Brass Bell game in a couple of weeks after this week is done.
Yeah, one other thing I'll add too, Aurora versus Benedictine is a pretty good rivalry for these two Midwestern sort of Chicago area schools. So that might be a 2 o'clock game you want to check in on to see what's going on. Those have usually been some pretty good matchups.
I'll take us partway through Region 6 here, and again, a lot of teams playing, let's say, interdivisional games, which makes it a little tough on the committee as to how to handle those things, although they're not supposed to be part of the primary criteria per se. They still often, influence discussions and, become possibly the last piece type situation. So with respect to that, I would say it's one of those things where you will watch those games, you get some information. If they win the games, it may help them slightly. If they lose the games, you can't go too deep into those situations to that point. That's what we've gleaned from it over the years. And you can see Bethel at Eau Claire. We'll see how Bethel bounces back or not. La Crosse, Northern Michigan is one I'm curious to see how that plays out. The West Coast games are actually more interesting to me overall. George Fox, Claremont Mudd Scripps, Linfield Redlands, that's a big rivalry game. Whitworth Chapman is kind of the, who's going to be kind of the next up scenario out west as well. Remember, Chapman had the game where they were up 23-0 against Pacific. That doesn't exist anymore because of the cancellation they had, and they had a full-scale cancellation for some reason. They did it that way versus what other teams did in week 2. I'm not quite sure why that is, why we have that separation occurring in that situation. But Pacific Pomona Pitzer, I remember this game has been a decent one over the years as well, and so we'll keep an eye on all of that for sure. JB, let's begin here to get our predictions going here, and that'll take a little bit of work for me to do so, and there they are. I believe that's what our corrected numbers are. Is that not accurate? 22-2 versus 17-7?
I think so. Yeah, that's you have a 5-game lead, so that either way.
Actually, maybe 22-4 and 17-9. Actually, I think I'm a little bit off on that. Now I'm looking at that. I think I forgot to add a couple losses.
I think that's right. We forgot a couple of for both of us. So yeah, I was like only 7. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no. So it's 22-4, 17-9. We won't fix it right now, but. One other thing before we do this, I do want to pay a little homage to our friend Quinn Peterson, or Quinn. It's fitting I did this that way. Quinn Patterson, out in Trinity. So as the story goes in this whole situation. Frank had a little bit of a mishap with typing out Ethan Boyer's name, and we've kind of alluded to it, from the Saturday game, and it was the first touchdown from Tucker Horn for Trinity, and Frank, of course, kind of screwed things up and typed in and let Siri take over to Ethan Boyle. And Ethan Boyer, in good humor, said, "Boy, I got to meet that Ethan Boyle guy because he's a really good player."
Oh man.
And Quinn Patterson sent us yesterday this photo of a helmet with a label of Boyle on it, saying that they had a new guy at practice this week, really worked his tail off trying to make a name for himself. Well done, Quinn. Well done, Ethan. Message has been delivered that I screwed up. I own the screw up 110%, and now it's time for me to screw up with predictions, possibly including your game. We'll find out. And JB, when we name the first game, we'll try to start the clock alongside it, and it's the Transit Trophy game moved to Friday night. I guess I start this one technically today, so here we go as I get this clock started. And I'm going to say that it's going to be a tight game. I think RPI wins the game, but I think at WPI, with that energy they had from last week's game, they're 2-0 as well right now. It's going to be a close affair. I think RPI wins it 34-31.
Yeah, I mean, RPI just has that huge roster, and traditionally Liberty League has just been, a little bit notch above some of these New England conferences. So I'll go with the Troy Engineers. Also, I think it'll be a close one early, but RPI might pull away late. Let's say 34-19.
Next up, Matt's Dartmouth at Framingham State in MASCAC action. You start.
Yeah, this was interesting because Framingham looked pretty ordinary against Salve, but maybe that's because their defense is so strong, and Mass Dartmouth sort of kind of goofed around a little bit in their last week's game. So hopefully the Corsairs have their sights set on this one because the Rams are going to bring it to them. But I do like the Corsairs to hang on. Avila Santos is one of the most talented QBs in the Northeast, if not the most. So I will give it to them. Higher scoring game, I'd say like 35-28.
Yeah, you're keying in on the key difference here. Right now, Framingham State's trying to find a quarterback that's going to be able to be their primary quarterback in the backfield. They tried, I think, 3 different players on that game, or in that game versus Salve Regina. Dante Avila Santos is a strong quarterback. He's got to stay focused in this game. I think maybe he was looking ahead last week is what I'm getting the feeling of, which you never can do in Division III football.
Nope.
Mass Dartmouth wins the game 34-17. Springfield at Union. I'll be there. And I'm going to pick the... you know what? Instinctively, I still was going to say I'm going to pick the Dutchman. I'm still going to pick the Dutchman, I guess.
Yeah.
Garnet charging their way through the game. I just think that they've controlled Springfield over the years enough to know how to beat them in the triple option offense. So I'm going to pick Union in a narrow win, 27-20.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just with guys like Paquette and others, they just have a lot of talent.
Piccatti.
They've got that receive. Piccatti, is that how you say that? Okay.
Yeah.
You got me there. You know better than me. Springfield will bring it to them just like they always do to the upstate New York teams, but I think Union will hang on with the little home cooking 27-24.
Grove City at Case Western. This is a big game in the pack for sure. Case Western struggled a little bit, though, against Teal. I think it was, 14-0 in the final score there, I believe it was, against Teal. And so, what do you think here? You go first.
Well, I'm sure Grove City's happy that Drew Saxon isn't around anymore. He was a real tough quarterback to plan against. But yeah, it seems like the Wolverines are sort of ratcheting up. They're maybe ready to take that next step, go to that next level. They're going to the challenge for the PAC championship this year. So I think it won't be as close as last year's game, but still, within a touchdown or so, I'll take the Grove City Wolverines to win it 24-13.
I don't know, I'm picking Case here. At home, I think Case has a good chance. I think they were getting that same looking ahead too far scenario in their first game of the season. And I think the Spartans can do this and win it at home. I'm going to give them a slight edge here. Lower scoring, 21-14 in favor of Case. And we'll see. That's one you can pick up right there. This is one maybe you'll be able to pick up too, as it's Whitewater at UMHB. I'm picking UMHB. I think that the growth I saw last week with Isaac Faye as quarterback told me, in looking at the players, they have the size, they have the speed. It's an experience issue, and the experience, I think, is kind of like where Whitewater was last year heading into this game. And Whitewater was able to win it at home in some unbelievable fashion, of course. I think it's, in Belton, UMHB's turn to turn the tables. This is my flyer of the week, as I say on Quick Hits coming up. I'm picking UMHB to win this game 31-27. As I drop something on the floor here in the meantime, so maybe that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Whoops.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that game last year, and there was no way in hell that the Crusaders should have lost. I mean, that was a huge mistake. I mean, the Warhawks were so lucky to win that game. But I feel like this year's teams are very different, and so I'm going to give a slight edge to this Warhawks squad that seems to, even with Ogden out, their backup QB came in, played really well. I think the Crusaders' defense is going to be a tougher matchup, but I still think the Warhawks, like they did with John Carroll, can kind of grind it out and win like 30-27.
Well, you're going to start a tough one also. Trinity at Birmingham Southern.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about the looking ahead from Huntington for the Panthers, but 77 yards of offense on that night. I just think Trinity's got way too much talent. And as Tucker Horn said on the D3 Rejects show over my shoulder, this is a playoff game for them. They can't afford to have any more losses, so I'll take Trinity 35-21.
Trinity's got several playoff games when you think about it. Hendricks, Berry, Birmingham Southern, they're all playoff games when it comes down to the teams that they need to beat so that the loss column looks the right way just to make it to the playoffs right now. They can afford one loss per se, but not necessarily guarantee themselves the playoffs if they do lose a game. They want to win out the SAA, and they need to do so. Trinity wins this game 34-20. Heidelberg at Ohio Northern. Tough one on paper when you kind of look at it, especially on the road for Heidelberg. I'm going to give Scott Donaldson's team the edge here, however. Heidelberg, I think, and the Student Princes are going to have a slight edge in this game. Final 27-21.
Yeah, I don't know as much about I think they're the Polar Bears at ONU. But I did see the Student Princes on that first Thursday of week 1, and they were pretty impressive. They have an explosive offense, and so yeah, I agree with you. I think the Student Princes will win this one. Let's say higher scoring, 42-27.
John Carroll at Baldwin Wallace, staying in the OAC. You start.
Well, the Blue Streaks have had a couple weeks to prepare for this one. Wallace has sort of looked iffy here and there, but it is a rivalry game. I think it'll be closer than people think, but I'll take John Carroll to win it 27-20.
Yeah, I think John Carroll's just too good right now. And the Whitewater game looks even better after what they did to St. John's the next week in terms of Whitewater.
Fair.
Yeah. John Carroll, I think, wins 31-17. Wheaton at Illinois Wesleyan, and I'm going to say that Wheaton does win the game, but in a close affair. I think that on the road, this is going to be a test for them a little bit. Wheaton wins 24-20.
Yeah, I think this Thunder team is a little stronger than you might be giving them credit for. I mean, I know Wesleyan has been a good rival, but I think with this Thorson at quarterback and Weeks at running back, they'll put up some points. I'd say Thunder win going away 49-21.
That's not the right game, but that's the right game. Coed Central in Region 5, and you start this one.
Yeah, well, we don't have Hawkins at quarterback anymore, so this one I really just feel I don't really know much about either team at this point. So I'll take a flyer and go with the home team, 24-21, and hope that works. I need to study up.
I was going to pick Central. Yeah, well, I think Central's got this one, and I'm going to say just from experience level right now. 31 to actually make it 30-24. It'll be close. These two always play close, but Central will win this game.
Yeah.
Going West Coast for the last two, Whitworth and Chapman here. I'm going to pick Chapman in this game. I think that they have a slight edge on Whitworth, especially at home. Under the lights, it'll be a great game to watch for those that want to stay up all night on Saturday night on the East Coast. If you're out west, go attend this game. It's going to be a very good game between Whitworth and Chapman. Chapman wins the game. I think it will be a close one, lower scoring affair, to be honest, 17-10.
Yeah, for some reason that 42-28 score from last week and the 3 touchdowns that receiver had for Whitworth is sticking into my head. So I think that maybe this year's team it might be stronger than we realize. So I'll go the opposite. I'll take Whitworth, and so we'll see what happens. I think they'll surprise some folks with a win over a good Skyac team, say 35-28.
Chance to get 3 games back, I think that means for you, unless we differ here for a fourth one. Linfield at Redlands, are you going to go for the upset?
Nah, I mean, Linfield is still a top 10 team until proven otherwise. I mean, yeah, they only won by 2 touchdowns in Ohio, but they played Redlands a lot over the last decade plus, so they're a pretty familiar situation. May not be as lopsided as some prior additions, but I'll take the Wildcats 35-21.
I hate to say it this way, but they haven't just played Redlands. They've owned Redlands over the last how many years. It's just been not even close. Linfield wins the game 40-17. I can't see it being like that, despite what happened last week and all that stuff. So that's that. We're a little bit over here. It's 10:15 a.m. on the East Coast on this live show. So JB, as always, first off, why don't you tell folks how to watch this week's college football action in Division 3/2/FCS/NAIA. Pick your teams that some of these teams are facing this week, but you get the point. How do you watch this weekend?
Well, there's 4 great games on tonight at 7 o'clock, so take your pick. You can kind of bounce around and see there. I'd probably say that the RPI, WPI, Springfield Union would be my top choice, but the NESCAC is back, and Wesleyan has an interesting game at Bates. We'll be kind of keeping tabs on that. Otherwise, you can start off pretty early on Saturday with good games like Rochester versus Salve or UMass, Dartmouth versus Framingham, and then over time kind of work your way to the 1 o'clock kickoffs of Susquehanna and Cortland, Catholic, Morrisville, Westminster, Washington, and Jefferson. You can even get to Hopkins, Salisbury at 2. Your Sinus, Rowan at 6. You got Grove City, Case Western at 7. Out in Region 3, you've got the 12 o'clock kickoff of Trinity and Birmingham Southern. That's a playoff game you probably want to tune into. Whitewater and Mary Hardin Baylor get going at 1 o'clock. Baldwin Wallace and John Carroll kick off at 1:30. So that's a nicely placed game in there. And Heidelberg at Ohio Northern, which we mentioned earlier, is a 6 o'clock kickoff. So something to save for later. All the Region 5 and 6 games basically start at 2 p.m. Eastern. So that Co versus Central game we picked, as well as games like lacrosse versus Northern Michigan, if you want to see a kind of interesting cross-divisional game, D3 versus D2. And then 4 o'clock, you start getting into some of the later games, and there's even 3 games at 10. So if you really want to drag it out over a 12-hour period, you can. It's going to be a long day of football on Saturday.
I want to thank Cole Burgess for joining us, wide receiver from Cortland, Fran Elliott for helping us set that up, sports information director at Cortland, and Chuck Hansen for joining us as well. Thank all of you for watching us and for all the support and views. We're going to try to get this thing on Tuesday, as we always promise. There will be hopefully no travel issues or tech issues. We're trying to work through those. A couple unexpected things happened this week, but we're working on it. We're trying to get you the information and the video that you look forward to every week here in the Huddle. Until next week's main show, watch for us on Twitter at D3FB Huddle, at Frank Rossi. I'll be covering the Morrisville Catholic game at Morrisville tomorrow, and tonight the Union Springfield game at Union. So we'll see you on Twitter. We'll see you on our show next week on episode 7. Have a good one, folks.